There is a buzzword now, and that word is trauma. And I think there's something positive about that because a long time ago, people don't even know they've been traumatized. Much more to do something about it, which is to tend to trauma, to heal it. But it has becoming a buzzword in which is it trauma or is it grief? So this video, I'm going to do a quick presentation. Oftentimes, people might feel very angry, depressed, anxious, and the underlying may be grief. I'm not saying that that's the only reason, but grief is a very under converse about because I will tell you in a moment why that is. You know, grief is painful. So is it grief or is it trauma or is it both? So in my practice, even if it's trauma, for instance, and you've healed your trauma enough, you've seen a therapist, you're doing your own practice, sometimes the residue may be grief. And I always want to share the concept of grief like a garden. Okay, so if you have a garden, grief is not just about losing someone. Of course, that's one meaning of grief, but it could be many things. So if this is your garden, you see that white pot in the middle. If you remove that pot, there is a sense of something's missing, of something is lost or was lost. So, in many ways, what we do with grief is we want to replace what was removed, what isn't there anymore. And it's not just about losing someone, but losing a part of ourselves. And the way to tend to grief is not just to occupy that space that's now hollow by stuff, by more other things, by another pot or another plant, which is usually what we do. But we tend to grieve by tending to the rest of the garden. So grief can have many different forms. I'll share with you. It could be losing a loved one, as I mentioned, losing a relationship, transitioning to a new role, even if having the birth of a child could be so celebratory across culture. There could be a grief there, or what used to be the role that you used to have, the life that you used to enjoy. Grief could also be a wish for connection that hasn't happened, or a wish for connection that will not happen. So that's a very painful longing that's unmet, and grief could bring that. It could also be fulfilling someone else's desire. So if you're have been living this life and everybody's celebrating you, but you feel like it's almost like there's this beautiful shoe. It's expensive. Everybody is complimenting you, but the shoe does not fit you. Either could be too loose, too tight. It isn't your shoe. So it's like living someone else's life. And there's grief when you think about that. Loss of function, whether that's physical or psychological. Loss of status. I know immigration can do this. If you once were a doctor, for instance, I'm from the Philippines, born and raised there, and then you come and migrate, and there's a loss of status. Now you have to start from scratch. It could also bring up feelings of grief, memories of what could have been done or said. Oh, I should have said this, I should have done this, and so much more. So I want to share with you like what grief is for me. Since I mentioned I immigrated in America when I was about 24, I know that that is such a celebratory experience, maybe for many, you know, land of the greener pasture. But for some of us immigrants, as you could have that experience of being excited, it's like going on a new adventure. There is something irreplaceable as far as leaving your country of origin. It's almost like the feeling of plucking um, a flower, you know, and if that flower likes full sun, now it's going to be put in a different garden or a different soil. Not that one is better than the other, but it's just not the best fit for that moment. And waking up, even just visiting the country, my Philippines, there's a certain aroma. You might not like everything. There's always a dysfunction in across culture, but there's a hominess, there's a scent, there's a feel. There's a something that the senses um, really the palate, swims in the familiarity and the feeling of even connection. And when you move to a different country, some people have that grief, and that was my story. I miss every corner of having been born and raised. So if that's you, that's grief. Maybe your mother had that and was not even conscious of that. And grief could be passed on, modeled, and the mother might be depressed or anxious, not knowing that the underlying reason may be grief. Now, why this is a problem, okay? When we have this garden and we're just busy putting something on that space where the vase used to be, is that we do not tend to ourselves. We don't process our grief. What happens is we run away from our grief. I'm going to put this here. We run away from our grief. That's the problem. Um, you want to solve grief like you're solving a puzzle. And grief is not that way. Grief is not something you cure. For me, you don't even heal grief. It's something that you just tend to, you cope with. Another one that you might notice yourself doing or other people is that you think this is a big one, especially if you were influenced by the more individualistic culture. You think you should grieve alone. Of course, there's space for that to be by yourself. But in general, there are many cultures including the Filipino culture, in which we grieve together. We change the paradigm of just being lonely, especially the type of loneliness and sadness that grief brings, when we know that it's not just us, that our sadness and our yearning and longing is something that is common and similar and something that other people could mirror. And so we collectively grieve together. And so my offering to you is that you don't have to grieve by yourself on your own. And here's my offering. It's just, it's collective grief. It's a live online class. If you're listening to this, it's April 5, 2025. Join the class. The link will be below. And there, you will learn about grief, different forms of grief, maybe befriend grief and even find grief in your body, where grief is lying in your body. Learn about how to collectively share your grief and be witness in your own grief. So again, it's April 5, 9 o'clock to 10:30. It's a live class, no recording provided, because it will be a sacred place for all of us, including myself. And if you decide to join, the link is below. Use the code GRIEF, GRIEF, by April 1. Actually, that's tomorrow. So don't forget, you don't have to be alone in your grief. We could grieve together. And thank you for listening. This is Roanne Samuels. I'm a licensed psychotherapist here in California. Take good care.